Really excited to be joined today by Sarah Grover. She's the CMO at Veggie Grill. Hi, Sarah. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I think the explanation of what Veggie Grill does is maybe in the name, but for those, especially outside of California, who may not be as familiar, although you guys have been in the news a little bit lately, maybe describe what Veggie Grill is.
Sure. Well, Veggie Grill is a 37 unit restaurant chain that is 100% plant-based. We're the largest plant-based restaurant company. We have majority of our restaurants are in California, but also recently opened in New York City and Boston and Seattle. So our positioning is that we make food that is good for our lives as well as good for our future.
And about what size? You said how many units, but can you say how many employees the company has?
Well, we've gone through a bit of a transition recently to adjust to the new situation. We have, yikes, I think about 1,000 employees at this point.
Gotcha. I just wanted to give people a sense of the size of the company. And you yourself have a history in the restaurant world. Can you give us a little bit of a tour through that?
Well, sure. I joined California Pizza Kitchen was my first position in the restaurant world in 1989, the end of 1989. And we had about 8 restaurants at that point and stayed for 25 years, left when we had 250-ish around the world. I was hired by the founders, who are former federal prosecutors, and we were sold to Pepsi, and then Pepsi sold us to a private equity firm, and the private equity firm took us public, and then we went private again all throughout those 25 years. So I was the legacy marketing executive from basically the beginning until 4.5 years ago. So after leaving CPK, I fell into a consulting opportunity with a chain that had just come out of bankruptcy, and they needed some assistance restructuring the team. So I was at Garden Fresh Restaurants for about a year helping out. We sold the company to a family fund, and then shortly thereafter, Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf asked me to come and join them in the same capacity to help reposition the business and help sell the company, which we did about a year ago. And it's interesting, but timing worked to my advantage, and I was asked to come in and help out at True Food Kitchen, which I did for just short of a year as the CMO was on maternity leave, and help on a few strategic initiatives. So that ended when she came back from maternity leave, and that was at the end of the year, and this Veggie Grill opportunity came up in January. So that's when I joined them to help as they were going through some management changes.
Got it. Thank you. Wow, that's quite a history. You've helped some pretty major brands, some of my favorites mixed into there. I want to talk about the current state of things right now in the world and the impact that it's having on your business, the restaurant industry as a whole. So Veggie Grill is more what I guess we would call a fast casual chain, meaning, it's not full table service, but you're not fast food either. So how much of Veggie Grill's business relied on dine-in customers before this? How much of the business was it?
About 50% dine-in, 50% off-premise.
Got it. So pretty big portion. And so when it first, became clear early on in this crisis that restaurants were going to have to shut down as a place to dine in, what were some of the first thoughts that went through your mind and in the operators' minds, and maybe what some of the first steps you guys decided to take were?
Well, initially, our immediate focus was the safety of our employees and our guests. So we needed to review and retrain all of our employees as to the very specific measures that we have in place and anything additional that we needed to introduce. And that continues to change each day now with the introduction of masks for employees. So those were the kinds of things that we started with. Then once we shut down the dining rooms, we introduced curbside service. We have third-party delivery, and we also have pickup, which we are trying very hard to provide a contactless pickup, as most restaurants are doing these days as well. So those were the immediate shifts, just to make sure that we were following all of the right protocol to keep everybody safe and healthy, and then making it easy for the guest.
And we've heard some of these elements from others as well, but doing contactless pickup is requires some changes to whether it's just technology or protocols and things like that. How difficult has that process been, or how easy? Maybe.
Well, it's an adjustment for sure. I'm not on the front line in the restaurants actually implementing this, but we have an incredible team. They're extremely passionate, and they recognize the importance of addressing all of these critical health issues. So being able to call in and say, I'm here, and pop your trunk so that they don't even have to interact. Rolling down the window on the opposite side. I mean, just things that are obvious. Those were the kinds of things that we ensured were put in place.
Yeah, and I mean, you have to it's like one thing to say it, another thing to make it, muscle memory for employees to do. I would imagine.
Yeah, I've seen a few companies that have introduced technology free or at a very reduced price to help with all of this. It's wonderful to see everyone being so generous, but I think it's critical to get the basics right first before you try to implement anything additional that people are not familiar with as part of this transition.
Yeah. You mentioned that there were some, you had to look at employee changes too. I imagine some of that meant retraining some employees that were working on the dine-in part into helping on the delivery, pickup, ordering aspect of it. Can you talk through a little bit of, some of the changes you made on the employee side, and how you delivered some of that communication?
Well, Zoom and other FaceTime technology is really how we have done it. Now we have our operators, the regional operators, as well as the managers, are in the restaurants. So they're able to translate what our head of training is going over with them, and training again and retraining. So the things that I mentioned earlier, just taking the precautionary measures of gloves and masks and contactless delivery and curbside, as I said, that was not in existence until a couple of weeks ago. So we just moved quickly to get that in place to make it easy for the guests to pick up the food.
Were there any changes that you made to the menu?
No, we were on the path to working on a new menu just in general for the company, and we decided that we needed to pause for a moment and get these critical elements in place with regard to safety around the coronavirus issues. But the menu as it is today is the same menu. Fortunately, we already had a healthy off-premise business, so we didn't have to make a lot of changes.
Yeah, so we talked about it, how such a large portion was in restaurant dining, but an equally large portion was already ordering online for pickup or delivery. So you already kind of knew what worked, and I imagine that flows through to understanding things like inventory and what to stock and what not to stock, especially we're dealing with more perishable goods here. So that probably changed a bit as well.
It did. I would say that what we did address with the menu is making sure that we put our value offerings forward in a time where everyone is uncertain about paychecks and what's happening in the world of savings accounts and being furloughed. So we introduced a family meal that is a special price, as well as featuring alcohol can now be sold through takeout. And this week we have our 10 items that are under $10. So we want to make sure that people remember, our guests remember, that we do offer a good value at a time like this.
Who doesn't like a good bottle of wine with some fried sweet potatoes or
right.
In terms of what you're hearing from your customers, what's been the feedback so far?
You know, our customers are very loyal. It's a wonderful community in the plant-based world, as well as just the general population of people that like to eat great food that's good for you. And so they're thankful that we're still able to provide their favorite menu. We did hear from a very vocal supporter a few days ago, Billie Eilish, and her brother Phineas made a plea on her Instagram to bring back our chocolate pudding, which was taken off the menu I'm not sure how long ago, but we were able to mobilize and get it on the menu, and made that family very happy. It also then introduced us to Billie and her mother's new charity called Support and Feed, which is providing plant-based meals to those in need in nursing homes and frontline responders, healthcare workers. And so we're participating with them in the coming weeks, helping out with those efforts.
Wow, that's fantastic. And I think a great segue into, what are some of the things that you guys are doing, outside of the normal course of business. Maybe we can start there, and then we can talk a little bit about the Great American Takeout. But just generally, what is Veggie Grill's approach to these times? It sounds like you guys, are very involved. Is that sort of part of the culture there?
Yes, we are very involved in each of the communities where we have a restaurant, and immediately our managers and regional directors wanted to reinforce that community participation. And so they have been engaging with the local hospitals nearby. I know in Santa Monica in particular, St. John's, we've been delivering on a regular basis to the ER. And I know many brands are doing that, which is fabulous. It's getting a little more difficult with how you can get through security. So they've set up a process to be able to deliver it right there at the entrance. And we're making a lot of employees, healthcare workers happy with our deliveries. So that's really been our primary focus, is to find the areas that are in most need in the communities where we have restaurants.
And tell us about the Great American Takeout, how that came into being and what Veggie Grill's involvement in it looks like.
Sure. Well, it's interesting because just 2.5 weeks ago, this didn't exist. And we were sitting around in a brainstorm meeting trying to figure out what we needed to do to be able to reinforce Veggie Grill's value, as I mentioned earlier, and how we could just get the word out in this very difficult, crazy environment. And initially, I was noticing that there were a lot of letters from CEOs. That was the first iteration of marketing efforts, just reinforcing quality standards. And then it sort of became noise, because every company in America was sending out a letter from their CEO. So I was thinking about this clearly an unprecedented situation that we're in, and I wrote up a concept basically that said, if we as an industry are going to be here tomorrow, we need to band together and market ourselves as an industry as one. Really think about how we could do this in an unprecedented way. How great would it be if Veggie Grill is supporting Blaze Pizza and Blaze Pizza is shouting out to Lazy Dog, and it becomes this infectious community that rises together. And so I gave this brief of an idea to my ad agency, High, Wide, and Handsome, and they came back literally 24 hours later, maybe not even that much time, with several thoughts, several different hashtag ideas. And the one that just spoke to me is the Great American Takeout. It really is a universal message that everyone in our industry can get behind. Nobody's going to eat at Veggie Grill every day. Nobody's going to eat at any place every single day. And therefore, we all will succeed if we band together, we'll all rise together. So from there, I really, the High, Wide, and Handsome created the marketing materials, and we just started posting all of this on our social channels, just on my LinkedIn and Facebook. And I shared it with a lot of my restaurant industry CEO and CMO friends and asked them to share it. And the first week just exploded. We ended up getting interest from CNN and Good Morning America and the local LA TV stations. And it was really beyond our wildest imagination. And there were then restaurant companies contacting me to say, are we doing this again? Are we doing it again? So we thought about it, and sales were much higher the day after we did this. And I heard that from many, many companies. And I was thinking we needed to do something a little different the second week to keep the interest. And if we were going to say we're all in this together, it occurred to me, well, what about Coke and Pepsi? They are arch rivals, but again, they're in this together with us as an industry. So I contacted both companies, and without a hesitation, they both said, we're in. You can include us. We want to support this initiative. So that's why the second week, their logos were prominently featured, and they tweeted us out on their social platforms to help generate more interest and get the word out even bigger. And the second week was just incredible, so much so that now we're doing a third and a fourth week and perhaps beyond. But also, what I didn't mention is that the first week we had a charity contact us with a big donor and said, Smithfield Foods wants to contribute a huge sum of money, and we'll base it off of the number of tweets. For every tweets or share, they will donate $5 up to $100,000. And the money that we raise will go to CORE, which is Children of Restaurant Employees, which was exactly why we're doing this to begin with, to keep our managers and our employees employed, as well as help take care of the families of those that have been furloughed. So from there, we have had a number of companies jump on board, Ventura Foods, and this week, tomorrow, we have Tyson Food, who is jumping in and contributing, and we also are partnering with the National Restaurant Association's Employee Relief Fund. And more and more companies are coming out of the woodwork because they see this as something that it is really fits all companies within the restaurant industry.
That's fantastic. I'm really just blown away by that. And do you, if you can, maybe we can tell our viewers here how they can get involved in sharing. What is it that they need to share?
Well, we have a website. It's thegreatamericantakeout.com. And every week we upload all of the new assets, the marketing materials, sample posts and tweets that can be easily copied and pasted anywhere and shared. We encourage anyone in the industry to help us get the word out to all of our guests that are dining out or dining in through takeout. And so it's very simple.
Great. And I'm just wondering, it might be a little premature to ask this question, but as you see some of this take off in such a big way, are there things that you and Veggie Grill and maybe others in the industry are learning and talking about that that you might foresee becoming just standard part of how you do business beyond this crisis?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think when people are passionate about what they do or the brands they're connected with, they'll rise to any occasion put in front of them. And that's been the biggest, really important learning out of all of this, to see that people want to make a difference. And when you're in a situation like we are in as a world right now and here in the United States, I think we're expected to think differently. And I imagine this will extend long after we're able to get back to our somewhat normal lives, however long that may be. I'm not sure when that is, so we need to continue to be creative to help keep what we are able to do afloat.
Fabulous. Well, thank you for all of your work in this industry, and best of luck, and thank you for coming on to talk to us about it today.
Thank you for having me.